Hi everyone, Raghu here with a new discovery. She is someone who wrote this amazing book, Joanna Garzilli, and I was just starting to talk to Joanna, and basically, I was saying like what we all need is some practical day to day stuff, and of course, in my own background, which goes back decades to India with Ram Dass, with Neem Karoli Baba, and meeting a lot of Tibetans, and really got involved with a lot of, not with Maharaji, that's Neem Karoli Baba, not with him. He was direct, simple, and non-dual in a way, in the way of bhakti. In other words, he was very, very unusual being. But we have had rather esoteric different teachings that we were prompted to take at that time and since then, especially around the Tibetan stuff. And so there's a way in which, though, sometimes that's very hard to apply in today's modern lifestyle. And so a book like yours really helps. And I'd like to connect up the dots a little bit as we go through it in terms of what it is that you're doing that really, I believe, helps people. And at the same time, where it connects with the same deeply spiritual tenets of something like Tibetan Buddhism or Bhakti Yoga, which is our tradition. So that's quite a preamble, ain't it, for this? But you know what? The book is called Big Miracles. So the first thing I'm going to need is from you is a definition of miracle.
Absolutely. Well, it's wonderful to be with you today, and I'm so excited for our conversation and where spirit leads us, what divine pearls of wisdom come through. To me, the idea of a big miracle is it's not something that happens suddenly, although it seems to be sudden, it seems to be miraculous. It's that when we make a commitment to a seed of desire, something that we have within our hearts that is part of our purpose, our spiritual purpose, that as we make that commitment and we follow through, we follow that path, that as we consistently take those steps and we show up one breath at a time, moment to moment, that is when that big miracle occurs. And essentially, I like to think of a big miracle as it is getting everything that you wanted and you believed possible, but maybe some part of you thought, well, it's not really possible because there's those two conflicting sides within oneself that are constantly coming up. So when saying a big miracle, it's something that you know then that even if it doesn't look like on the outside that things are moving in the right direction, they are, because it gives you a focus point.
Okay. And now spirit. Because these folks, when you read the book, by the way, the book is out, is it not, Joanna?
Yes, it's everywhere. Yes, Big Miracles is everywhere.
So go to Amazon, everybody, and buy this book and use our URL from Be Here Now Network. So we get that's perfect.
There it is.
Yes. And we get a couple of shekels when you do that, everybody. So it helps everyone. And you are supporting what Joanna is doing, and which you'll hear all about in the next hour. Okay, the other word, of course, that's used very much, spirit. Yeah.
Yes. So I believe we are spirit. Spirit is everywhere. It is in all things. It is energy, vibration, matter, and it's in a small flower to being in us as human beings, to being the night sky, to even being sitting in traffic on the 405 in Los Angeles. So
no, it's not there. Sorry.
But I think the point is just to be able to see spirit in all things. But essentially it is breath, it is life, and spirit animates us. And so a lot of the time we get caught in just being in our physical body. And in my belief is that through yoga, through meditation, through different forms of physical exercise, to connecting with family, to traveling, that we get to get different viewpoints, different experiences of spirit. Because essentially, the more that we focus, say, on being spiritual beings or having a spiritual practice, that is us saying, I want to be more. Not in a gluttonous, greedy sense, but I want to experience more of everything that there is, so that I can improve myself, so that I can make more of an impact, that I can have a positive influence on other people in the world.
Mm. Would you connect spirit with soul in any way?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel soul. So I feel spirit again is just the pure energy that is around us. And soul, I feel more is about the personality of the spiritual part of ourselves. Oftentimes, say, if I'm connecting with someone who is, let's say, they're stuck in a certain area of their life, and I'm connecting to that person. If there is a misalignment for them, that will show up as soul fragmentation. So it's as if a soul, I feel, is like the imprint of that unseen energy that overlays is an extension of our physical selves, and that there are these different pieces that we're whole, but throughout, because I personally believe that that in reincarnation, and that we have more than one life, that as we've gone through different lifetimes, through certain lessons that perhaps things that happened unexpectedly, or we just didn't know how to process, or there was an emotional trauma, creates a soul fragmentation. And so how do we get back to making our souls whole again is opening up to saying, Spirit, flow through me, let me experience you. And Spirit gives us the ability to see clearly, to feel with clarity, to have certainty about who we are on our path. And then that creates the glue, you could say the spiritual glue, to experience wholeness within the soul that allows us to enjoy each moment in connecting with another soul, with another human being, in connecting with one's environment.
Maybe we could talk about spirit as the Buddhists talk about true nature. That would be a little bit, that true nature resides in everything, of course. Similarly, there's soul, there's individual soul, and then there's oversoul, and that oversoul is spirit residing in everything, so that in that way it is connected. By the way, everybody, Joanna is an intuition coach. Okay, so that's what we're looking forward here, to get some intuition coaching here today. I'm usually end up at being on the other end of it, so I'm kind of happy. I had a therapist, a scientist named Paul Ekman on a few weeks ago, who is an expert in emotions, a psychologist, and I got an hour therapy session. It was like fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I like what James Van Praagh, who is a very well-known psychic, right?
Yes,
yeah.
One of the best in the world. I mean, he's awesome, and he's such a sweetheart.
Really? Did he read you? Have you done a reading with him?
I haven't done a reading with him. I originally met him at the West Hollywood Book Fair a number of years ago. I had been to a couple of his different events, and then I reached out to him, and fortunately he remembered meeting me, and he was the first person actually to read Big Miracles. So It was a real honor to get the positive review endorsement that I got from him. It meant a lot to me, because he is such a master at what he does. And I love that not only has he taken his gifts of mediumship and being able to help others as a psychic medium and connecting with loved ones on the other side, but that he channeled that into the entertainment industry as a writer, as an executive producer. He had a very successful show for a number of years, The Ghost Whisperer, with Jennifer Love Hewitt. And I have a lot of respect for people that can take a certain talent and then diversify. Because oftentimes, I don't know if you go through this, but I know when people say, well, I'm thinking about changing career, or if I do this, then I can't do that. And I always like to take a yes and approach. do this and then add to your repertoire and
Yeah.
build your endurance for doing more than one thing to share your gifts
Yeah.
with different people.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, what he said, which to me is the most apt thing around the book, is it gives you a better understanding of yourself and assists you in fulfilling your soul's blueprint. And I kind of really like that idea of the blueprint, and a lot of what we do in letting go of the dark stuff and the shadows that we have is to get in tune with the blueprint, which can also mean in the Hindu area, samskaras, that you start to realize what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing to actually live this blueprint. So and here's something from the book that it's very, it's obviously from the first chapter, and my concern a lot with any book that um, can help people with intention and then producing results in their life that are going to enhance their lives, that it's missing what you're not missing right here. You are far more than your mind and your body. You are first and foremost a spiritual being, a mind and a body animated by spirit. At your best, you are an expression of love and a demonstration of beauty, someone creative and inspiring. At your worst, you are an expression of your unevolved ego, a narrow bandwidth of consciousness bent solely on defending your self-interests. Someone frightened, possibly abrasive or clinging. It's not that you stop being spiritual when you're driven by ego. It's that you don't recognize yourself as such. Anytime you feel joyful, peaceful, and fulfilled, you're fully expressing your true spiritual nature. So to me, that's everything else that happens after has to be seen through that light, for sure. And
Right, the answers are always there. It sort of reminds me about Paulo Coelho and The Alchemist, right? And the story of the boy going off and leaving home and going on that adventure. And as you just shared and read to me the first paragraph there from chapter 1 of Big Miracles, that everything we need is already here. All the wisdom, the support, the resources, and then it's just being able to get to that point. I suppose the rest of Big Miracles is showing different ways through the different rules. Here's how you get to that. It is already there. We are already home. And it what I found in my life, it's that on a daily basis upon waking, not to be so shocked, so rattled, so scared of resistances or negativity that comes in from other people's life experience of where they're at. When you spoke before about the samskaras, right? These negative patterns or just these schisms that move us out of peace into misalignment. And my hope with Big Miracles is that it ends up being a very simple plan to help someone get right back to going, yes, I am this spiritual being and I get to be myself without apology, and I get to enjoy my life, because what a blessing, right? That we are alive. And even though, I know some people, particularly at the moment, have this perception of the world that we are in a terrible time, that everything is falling apart. I would say, right, shadows that are coming up there, but that actually we are in a time of great innovation. We have, I believe, more and more consciousness, more and more opportunities, and the way that innovation and understanding and compassion have increased, accelerated within, say, what took 100 years before is happening within maybe a 10-year period now, is incredible. I really feel that we have moved into this age of light, and that we get to every day practice experiencing that light. And of course, as more light comes in, there is more shadow that is there for clearing. So I think some people are quite rattled in that they think, oh, I'm going to embark upon this spiritual path, And then stuff comes up, icky stuff comes up, and they go, hang on a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. But I know from when I started doing yoga, back when I was 20 years old, that once you wake up, you can't just suddenly say, now I want to go back to sleep. Right?
Yep.
I know you know that. It doesn't work like that. And so I think some people are just, I see certain people in the sort of, I guess, spiritual new age community that they want all the good feeling stuff without having to do the deeper work. And we know one has to, like, there are the rewards, and there is such a great feeling of when you really dig in and do the deeper work.
Yeah. And you talk about perspective. Spiritual awakening is occurring for you when you see your relationship, circumstances, and environment with new awareness. And for me, new awareness, that is absolutely the first thing that has to happen. You suddenly realize, wait a minute, the perspective I've been living from mind-ego place and in polarization and so on is actually, that's not reality. So that's the absolute first thing. And then what you just said is, the next thing is you take this new awareness that you have and realize you've got to develop that in a very strong day-to-day way so that it's centered in the middle of your chest rather than your head. And then from there, you can start to make a little bit of friends with suffering, which is endemic, as the Buddha said, on a day-to-day basis again. So I think, that's highly, highly important, that first step of awareness for sure. Something else I liked a lot about honesty. You talk about being honest with yourself about negative thoughts and so on and so forth. I think that's I want you to talk about it because it's a very, very difficult thing for people to be honest. As you know, my involvement with Ram Dass, I don't think there was anybody who was as honest as he was when he first woke up. I mean, he woke up with psychedelics, of course, in the 60s and so on, but it was only until he went looking for what is reality, and he found Neem Karoli Baba, and then he came back and talked about it. But he talked about it. That was what attracted me. The first thing, oh shit, it's okay. I'm okay. I'm not crazy. I'm not bad. I'm not my negative thoughts. I'm not my positive thoughts, for that matter. There was a way, I could see a way through. So talk about self-honesty. I think it's a huge big deal for people.
I love that. And self-honesty sets one free. People say they want the truth. Oftentimes, I'm all about truth. They're not about truth. I mean, there's a massive denial that is there. And that is the thing that keeps one asleep and stuck. So I find that really checking in oneself when one wakes up in the morning and before one goes to sleep at night, at a minimum, are necessary. But ideally without getting obsessive, but really to check in as often as possible throughout the day so that you can have perspective is so vitally important. And the thing is that I know for myself in the past, I had so much denial because I was scared to look at certain things. But as I started to peel back those layers, it really gave me the ability to go after certain things that I wanted for my life, to let go of a lot of the angst that was there. Because whenever we try to make someone else wrong or get them to see our point of view, it just ends up sucking our energy dry. It ends up being such a negative thing. And I think that when one checks in on oneself and uses that tool of self-honesty, it might be that, yes, you already are being totally honest. And then great. Well, then don't worry about what someone else thinks or what someone else accuses you of or blames you for. It's just coming, it is, I think, one of the best tools to get back into right alignment quickly.
Mm. And I think part of it is, just to add to that, would be around motivation, so that there of course is mindfulness is the byword today, right? that everybody's
Yes.
using. And some of it can be used righteously for deepening your self-awareness, and some of it is good if you trade better on the stock exchange, that kind of stuff. But there is using a tool of that, which we called back in the day, and Ram Dass coined it, the witness, which getting out of witness, of course, is not witnessing like from your mind, which is making judgments and looking at it from a point of view that's totally within separation, but witnessing it, developing a real non-judgmental place from which to witness your motivations in whatever it is you're doing. That adds to a great ability to be way more honest with yourself. So,
Well, the funny thing was actually this morning, I came back, I went and did a running class, and it was fabulous because I find running is a great meditation for me. I rotate between doing different things. Sometimes I do a lot of yoga. Now at the moment it's running because I like to develop. I find different exercises develop different parts of myself. I came back and there was a review it was my first horrible review on Amazon. They've been all 5-star reviews and I got one horrible review. And my initial sort of reaction was, what the, like, who is this person? Why did they write this? What was going through their head? Oh my gosh, someone goes now and looks and then they're going to have this preconceived idea. And then I start reading the review and what the person's saying. They're saying they're a beginner to self-help and I don't explain any how. So my head starts going to, what do you mean I don't explain any hows? And I have such a good review in Publishers Weekly. I mean, my head was going nuts for stuff. And then I turned to my husband. I said, what do I do? Do I reply to this? Like, it was that was like, I went out of alignment there. And then it was right when I'd had some really good press come out, different things. And I came back to, I just, thank gosh, from having this awareness, I took a step back and I just went, you know what? Each person is where they're at. They're entitled to have whatever their opinion is. And I can't have control over what that other person is doing. I wanted to write a comment below and say, why? But instead, I had enough awareness to I emailed my publicist and my marketing director, and I said, I got my first horrible review. Like, what, I just am interested, what's your perspective on this? And they both said, don't reply. Just it's not something to focus on. That there's nothing founded in that. And it was like I was able to get myself back to a place of peace. And then I was about to hop on client calls. So I really wanted to make sure I was centered. And so that thing of what you said before about the self-honesty, and it's like just constantly having to come back to that place of no matter how evolved we get or supposedly how many spiritual tools we have, I think be able to recognize the things that trigger us and that feeling of, for me, it was an old wound of I'm being rejected here or someone's making a judgment of me, and just being able to just go, let it go, just let it go. So that I could say, well, it's a negative. It's sometimes out of these what feel like horrible things or negative experiences, that was an opportunity for me to grow.
Yeah, and that's perfectly part of grist for the mill. Everything is. It's all perfect. Even as you said earlier, this stuff that's going on in this country right now is providing a lot of grist for the old mill for everyone. And there is a way in which it is enhancing compassion, as you said. It absolutely is, amidst, of course, a lot of suffering and more to come. Unfortunately, that'll trickle down. So, yeah.
Yes, and what you're saying at that political level, what I noticed for myself is to instead of say, well, this side's right or that side's wrong, and especially when everything blew up on Facebook and a lot of people would post stuff politically, and I decided not to do that. My focus, where I try to put my focus, is how can I come up with solutions? Rather than this side's right, this side's wrong, and just to keep coming back to I don't want to say neutral, part of me says neutral. It's not that. I just think focusing on how can we grow, because I used to think many years ago, oh, we have one spiritual awakening. For me, my big spiritual awakening was back when I was around 20 years old, and it sort of carried over through a 3-4 year period. But then what I've found is that there are these constant series of spiritual awakenings that are happening. And if we are focused on improving ourselves, then we're always going to go through more and more spiritual awakenings, and to embrace that rather than, oh my gosh, I've got to grow again. I can't do it. What's going to happen next? Just to keep trying to relax into that and not dread things.
Mm. Oh, tell me about your spiritual awakening, please. Tell us that story. Original.
Yes, that original spiritual awakening happened. I used to go to a gym in northwest London in Belsize Park, and I had a yoga. It was the first time I really came across yoga, and he had, oh my gosh, I don't know why I can't remember his name now. He was an incredible yoga teacher who spent many years, like yourself, out in India. And that, as I went through these classes at the gym, the meditation started to, I'd say to him, I'd start seeing this violet light in my third eye. I didn't know that was the third eye then. And it really started to, where I've been very clairvoyant, had the ability to be a very strong intuitive since I was a child. It suddenly all, instead of having this terrible fear, there was just this excitement of being able to embrace those spiritual gifts. And I started to really have a deeper fascination with understanding energy, how energy works just beyond the physical. And so that opened up so much to me. And through meditation, I would find then that my nighttime dreams were really powerful. And it also opened the doorway for me to want to travel around the world and connect with other indigenous cultures and see that no matter what the religion, what the race, what the age group, what the gender, that there were commonalities there that are universal threads. And so that was... That really was transformational for my life and the path that I took in terms of my career and my relationships. And now I sort of feel like I've come back around full circle. It's more I'm in a period of integration right now before moving into this next cycle of growth.
What you experienced was the same as what we got when we went to India and we met Maharaji. Because the first thing he said, he pointed his finger up and went, it's all in Hindi, sub-ek, all one. There is only one. Absolutely, definitively, every day, one. Krishna, Buddha, Muhammad, Christ, blah, 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 one. So, yeah.
And something that happened for me a few years after that was when I came out to the States, and I was taking lots of trips back and forth from the UK to the US. And I remember going to the self-realization fellowship at, the Lake Shrine. And through a dear friend of mine, I ended up spending 3 months at the Sunburst Ranch, which was outside of, it was like very close to Buellton and Solvang, up in that area there.
Oh, yeah.
In California. And it was while Norman Paulson was still alive. He was the last living disciple of Yogananda. We were filming a movie documentary up there. And I remember when I was in Los Angeles and learned about Kriya Yoga, because there's many different styles, right, different approaches to yoga. I just had this attitude, I suppose the unevolved ego, the part of me was like, we just want to know these Kriyas now. Like, I just got to get this because then I can get to here. Instead of realizing it's an ongoing thing. So when I found out about where Norman Paulson and the teachings up there, up at the farm, at that center, and I spent some time there, we got taught the Kriyas right away. But what I didn't realize was just knowing or learning a particular tool, so to speak, doesn't mean that everything's then just going to flow perfectly in your life, because it goes back to what you're saying, some, how do you refer to it again?
Yeah, samskaras.
Yeah, the samskaras, these patterns, these imprints upon our soul, that as we start to dive into these practices, if something is out of alignment, it will really come up. And I think that looking back on that time period when I was there for the 3 months, I had certain judgments of how people approached their spiritual practice, what they did within the community, how things were supposed to evolve. And I've seen it from different spiritual communities where there are different leaders with certain type of yoga practices. And for me now, I'm in a very different place. If I think there is something valid for everyone, and if someone has a judgment, it means either they just don't get it or it's not for them. Because if it's working for other people, then it's working, and that's it. It's as simple as that. So that's definitely been eye-opening for me.
The gift of a mistake is another section of the book that I also think is terribly important, because it involves fear. Number one, we are so afraid at the most simple levels, too, of work levels, interrelationship level, spiritual path level. It really is a big deal. A mistake can help you clarify where you need to, you make an attitude adjustment. I love that part of it, too, yeah. There's a lot of attitude adjustments that are needed for many of us on a day-to-day, for sure. But talk about mistakes, because most people are in fear of making a mistake, but multi-level, not just in terms of their career and so on.
Absolutely. I mean, I know that fear and making mistakes had paralyzed me in the past from moving forward with my soul's blueprint. And then I reframed it to, well, what if mistakes are miracles waiting to happen? You know, we take a certain action, and then rather than go, oh my gosh, like how could I have avoided that? Say, okay, I didn't know, and what can I learn here from this? I mean, I really feel like one of the ways to move beyond the pain of a mistake is say, there is something to learn from this, and to embrace that learning. And when a mistake paralyzes someone, it's likely because they have been scolded, judged, criticized in some capacity, typically by someone who loves them very much. Not because that person wants to be horrible, say to their child, to their brother or sister, to their friend, but because they feel your pain, and because they feel so connected to you, they don't want you to mess up, because then it's a reflection on them. And if we were able to sort of take a step back, take a pause, or catch ourselves quickly when we feel like someone is making a mistake, or we make a judgment of ourselves for making a mistake, that there will be more confidence, space, ability to say, I'm going to try something new. Because if we go back to children, right, they don't say, well, I fell over once, so I'm not going to get back up again. I'm not going to go and try and walk, or I'm not going to try and speak again because I couldn't pronounce a word. Right. There isn't that filter, that resistance there. It's only from the conditioning that comes from those who are older, that where they feel the energy of that something is wrong, and then that gets locked in at the energy level. So if one can come back to this idea, I feel, of there is nothing wrong with being a beginner in something, and that is so freeing. And that if you are already an expert in another area, approaching something that you haven't done before, that you're not good at, then really strengthens the areas that you are good at too. And it just gives you the opportunity to have a different experience, to, I think, to recognize those those patterns, those blocks within oneself
Yeah.
as well. So I'm all about trying new things and feeling the fear and then just going, okay, it's just fear. Just move through it. Just one moment at a time. Just do your best. And then somehow it stops being scary. Or maybe it's a little bit scary, but it's not as scary.
Tell your story of going through something new with the whole Laker girl thing. I love that story. It's
Yeah,
great in the book.
that was terrifying for me because had I had a lot of fear around going and dancing, doing choreographed dance. There's a big difference between hopping onto a dance floor versus doing that. And on TV, they make it look easy. So my husband and I, we would watch the Laker Girls, the TV show. I loved it. I watched it relentlessly because I felt it was about much more than dancing, and that there were really deep spiritual lessons in there. And then he said, well, you could do that. Why don't you go and try out for it? And I just thought, not to go and get on the team. I mean, I was 40 years old, but I thought I could get through the first round. I could make that a goal. And I remember back to my childhood. I used to go to this ballet class when I think I was 5, 6 years old. And I was so proud when we went in the theater and did this performance. I had this wonderful outfit on for the ballet, and it was this gorgeous British theater. And then afterwards, my mom said to me that she said, oh, we laughed so much seeing you there on stage. You look like an elephant. And that was, I know she didn't mean it like that, but it was mortifying for me. And it just really, it made me have a lot of fear around being able to do something that I loved, which was dancing. So fast forward to being 40 years old and trying out for the Laker Girls. What I did in that preparation, I only had 2 weeks to prepare. Some of these girls who are auditioning have been dancing their whole lives, right? I mean, they've gone to school for it. But there was something in condensing into that 2 week period. I went and did a lot of dance classes at the top dance studios. And every time that I went to class, a little bit more shame got released from me. It wasn't so bad, the trying out, doing the audition when the cameras were there from the TV show and a few hundred girls and the judges for the show. It was the day before I was going to do this dance class that I didn't realize it was for 11 to 14-year-olds. And it was a turns class. Turns, I didn't realize it's all these pirouettes. And I had this total flashback at the end of the dance studio, there was a glass window, and I saw the parents watching their kids. And I remember doing these pirouettes, feeling totally off balance. And I felt like, oh my gosh, they're laughing at me. And it was just like this shameful feeling in my solar plexus. When I went out of the class, I didn't leave the class though. When I went down to the car, my husband was waiting with our 3-year-old son in the back. And he said, how was the class? Because he was going to drive me to another dance class right afterwards, to a hip hop class. And I burst into tears. I said it was horrible. And he said, oh, so you don't want to go and do the next class? I said, no, take me to the next class. So that really for me was a great lesson in having resilience, in feeling embarrassment, feeling shame, just feeling awful and going, I'm not going to let that stop me. I've made a commitment to do something here, and which goes back to rule 11, get outside of your comfort zone. And I'm just going to show up and do this. And so they ended up putting me on that TV show. I'm the only person that they've had on that TV show who is not a dancer. I think they put me in the storyline because it was inspiring to say it's never too late to follow your dreams. And it really never is too late. But the interesting thing is that in doing that, it released so much fear for me that then I became much stronger in my work, in my actual profession. And then I did the same thing with going for singing classes too. I just started doing all the things that would terrify me.
That's great, Joanna. I love that. Great story. You talked about unevolved ego. I think we should talk about unevolved ego, because all of us are get quite scared of our who we think we are, that being the ego, who we think we are, and to talk about it in terms of, gee, that's just. I would call it, and Jack Kornfield has he does a good little rap on it. We're just human. It's okay. That kind of sentiment. And that would be the unevolved ego. And of course, there's a great line. The ego is a shitty master, but not a bad servant. So, given all of that, I think that you're right. What you say here is the unevolved ego always comes from a wounded place within you, and I think everybody on this planet that isn't come in completely enlightened is dealing with a wounded place, and that is what happens on a day-to-day, matched with our self-interest, that we are in reaction to what is coming into our sphere, our field, and insecurity and guilt and all of that. Talk about that a little bit in your own experience and the people that yourself and the people you've worked with.
Yes, reaction and the embarrassment, the guilt. The best example I could give of unevolved ego most recently is from right before we got on this Skype. And that's why I find every single thing as an opportunity to be able to grow. So in our conversation before we got on here together, and I thought we were just doing audio, not video, right? So my unevolved ego goes, oh my gosh, you got no makeup on. You cannot go on camera. And then even you said to me, well, do you want to take a moment to just go and put a little bit of makeup on? And I thought, you know what? No, I'm not going to go and do that. I think back to, I think it was 3 years ago, a dear friend of mine who she's a coach as well. And very strong woman. She's awesome. And she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she's young as well. And I remember I went to go and visit her, and it was the day after she had one of her breasts cut off, and so I went over to see her, and she was just like, look, she pulled up her top and she showed me where her, boom, with the all the stitches there, and I thought, this woman is so beautiful. She is so strong. She is so amazing. I didn't go like, ooh, well, look, one's there and the other one isn't there. And yet, I would say from the perspective with my unevolved ego in that circumstance, the makeup is being so quick to judge myself, to be critical of myself. I was looking through photos yesterday from a shoot we just did for on other business. And I turned to my husband and I said, oh my gosh, thank God for retouching, because I could see some lines, like some of the photos were great, but I could see the lines are there. Having to deal with the reality of I'm not 20 years old, I'm 44 years old. And yet this thing from our society that, is just permeates. So recognizing that unevolved ego and then just going, for me, what I found works is just saying, all right, I see it. And I'm not going to let it stop me. Like, I'm not going to let that be an obstacle, because the reality is, if I wasn't me and I was watching this, sharing and being part of connecting in this way, I wouldn't be looking going, oh, well, this person looks like that. Like, that wouldn't even enter my mind. I don't care. So why do I care so much what someone else thinks? So I think that the thing is we have to look inwards and we have to go, where did that conditioning come from? Where were we told over and over, whatever that version is of, you're not enough, you're ugly, you're not smart enough, you have to do things this way to be lovable, to be successful, and to just strip that all away. So, right, every moment is an opportunity to grow.
Ram Dass has a book on aging, Still Here. It's a fabulous book, by the way.
Oh, I need to read it. I'm going to read it.
No, don't read it. Don't read it. It's gonna. Well, no, it will happen. It'll happen to me. I read that book, and every line, every second page was, oh shit! I am totally caught in this. Oh my God! I am absolutely denying it in every which way you could possibly deny it. And then I was with him one day, and I said, you know that book you wrote, Still Here? I happened to read parts of it the other day. It's just awful, Ram Dass. Everything you say in it, I'm doing. I'm acting out. And to see that part of me is ugly, okay? Sense of humor is very important in dealing with, in my mind. And that's why, of course, he was so popular, because he was so funny. But
it goes back to the self-honesty that you were
yeah,
saying before. Absolutely.
yeah,
If we can call ourselves out on our stuff, then it doesn't control us anymore,
yeah,
right? If we can
yeah, and just
not indulge the unevolved ego.
yeah, and you that happens by just a little bit of spaciousness. We are human. It's okay. That's part of it. And at the same time, there's awareness. And once there's awareness, this stuff will burn off.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about the ego, there is a part of the book here where you do. God, I've been dying not to make this comment. I'm fighting with myself. 6 character flaws that come from 6 character flaws that come from ego. Okay, narcissism, manipulation, betrayal, revenge. What am I missing? Greed.
Mm-hmm.
Have I hit them all?
I think there's one more.
There's one more. I can't
Is
find
it
it.
envy? Did you say
Wait,
envy?
victimization.
Oh.
That's it. Okay, I have to do this. I'm going to get killed for this, but these 6 things, they remind me of somebody who's a public figure right now, okay? Every one of these things absolutely makes up the persona of this public figure right now. So I'm not going to say any more than that, because I'll really get into trouble. But this is certainly, when you put all of those things together, that's probably the worst characteristics that any one of us could walk around with. To have all 6 of them at the same time is kind of nuts. I mean, and we all have a little bit of all of that in us, which is the other thing to recognize when we're doing the us and them thing, which I, by the way, admit to. And in this particular case, but I think it's probably too much to go into all of them at this point. But I would love to just talk about victimization, because that's one that I think that it's difficult. Narcissism. We are like the movie of me, as my friend Krishnadas says. We wake up and it's the movie of me from the get-go. Mm-hmm. Okay, so narcissism is certainly a natural thing. We do want to manipulate our environment to get what we think we want and what we think we need. Betrayal, I mean, probably at some point in our lives we've had some experience there with betrayal and revenge. But victimization, talk about that.
Well, I mean, you can be a victim of circumstance, of a relationship. You can be someone who is putting someone in a position where you're hurting them, maybe not consciously, but unconsciously, if you're not aware of your patterns within yourself, where you're being hurtful towards someone else. And I think that victimization is typically when it's within us. It's when we use it as a crutch. There are many people that I've found throughout my coaching career who feel like they are a victim of something, that something is happening to them. But so far in my life experience, I have found that if something feels like it's happening to you, it's not just happening for no reason, because people have been unfairly persecuted, judged, attacked, and yet they have found strength to be able to stand up for themselves and to create transformation as well. So I feel that victimization calls for courage, to be able to step into courage when dealing with it from someone else, and to have compassion for oneself when one feels like one is being a victim. And the idea of, when I was saying about the payoff, when someone says, well, this thing is happening to me, I'll say to a client of mine, well, there's some part of you that wants that. What is that? Well, why would I want to be broke? Or why would I want to be in this abusive relationship? Well, if you didn't, you would get the hell out of there. Or you would say, what am I going to do to get out of debt and generate income today? Like, there's always an action that you can take to create a transformation in your life. Will it happen like right there on the spot? It may take a little bit of time, but letting go of that energy really frees one up to be able to start to create that miraculous life that one wants. But yeah, the payoff is the big thing there. Of victimization, I find, is it's a crutch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People indulge big time in that. Yeah, for sure. And I kind of want to close this. I mean, there's so much in this book, everybody, and I think it's got so much great information to really get your life a little bit more in balance. I think that you talk at one point, start with simple acts of accepting responsibility for your life, like flossing your teeth even if you feel tired. That's like a good example. I love that. Putting the dirty dishes in the dishwasher, another perfect example. And doing the laundry routinely so you have enough clean clothes that you like to wear. Responsibility for simple actions will equips you for bigger responsibilities. And I think, and you talk about responsibilities in relationships and dealing with setting boundaries and making agreements and so on and so forth. But I think the general concept of responsibility is something that many, many, many people, many of us have a hard time with. And it's just there's a little bit of laziness that's involved, a little lack of courage. You talked about courage just a little bit ago. I mean, courage is extraordinarily important to be able to do the things that are necessary that maybe make changes in your life. I just did one. I'm doing one now myself, and it has to do with a health thing. But, no bread, no milk.
It's a big one.
Okay, no tea. What's the only thing I like in this world? Chai from India.
I love it. Milky
black tea with wonderful toast and butter. Gone. I mean, I just did it in a second because I've been, I'm tuned in enough to know at some point, not only will this help me with the direct thing, which is whatever cholesterol issue I might have, but it'll help me to shore up a place inside myself that is able to create space around things that are tough, around things that we don't like to go through, and directly around suffering, which is what most of us run away from. And so the first absolute step is to even have an awareness around responsibility for who you are. And you talked about reincarnation a little bit ago, and I was with a very well-known, incredible Tibetan Lama many years ago in India. It's a whole other story. But one of the things he told me, take care of your body. It's very precious to be able to get a birth. A human birth is rare. So don't just, think that bang, you get reincarnated and you get another body. There's all kinds of different levels and planes of consciousness where true nature, souls, whatever the hell you want to call that thing, spirits go. And so responsibility is so directly important in so many different areas. So, from your point of view, talk a little bit about it.
Absolutely. And I think overwhelm as well. It's hard for people to accept responsibility when they're overwhelmed. And those examples of the flossing the teeth, the doing the dishes, the doing the laundry, is it's just starting simple, because sometimes we've created such big messes for ourselves in our lives that didn't happen overnight. It was over a series of time. And so just coming back to the basics of the simple things to deal with can become a meditation that can help us to gain perspective, to have very small wins, so that we can then build up to dealing with some of the more challenging things that we need to get responsible for. But just making those small changes, like you were saying with the toast and with the tea, it can be absolutely life-changing. And for many people, that accepting responsibility around self-care and diet is huge. It's not so much about diet, it's about a lifestyle, and the importance of treating one's body as a temple. And I know that the more that I focus on my connection with spirit, that is a repeated message that I have had over and over. And so I cut out many things from my diet a while ago. Occasionally I'll have a little indulgence with something, but I know not to let it become a pattern. It's a once in a while. Like, it's just sometimes, like, I can feel if there's a weakness within me, and I'm going and I want to go and do that thing that isn't so good for me, say, having extra sugar or something like that I'm using it then from an emotional standpoint, and I have to not do that and work it out from the inside and use spiritual tools, versus, I'm going out and it's someone's birthday and I'm going to celebrate and have a little bit of cake. So.
Yeah, and these all are small things which build up it builds up of sustenance, spiritual sustenance inside oneself. And it spills over into, because as far as I'm concerned, there has to be a day-to-day practice that re-identifies you. That's what we were talking about in the very, very beginning of the podcast. Coming from a perspective and having a spiritual identity rather than your identity with the ego. That is not easy to do in a way that you can be honest with yourself. And practice is absolutely needed. To me, it doesn't matter what it is, but I do recommend certainly mindfulness practices and meditation practices with anybody who I'm around and is interested and wants to know something. So I think, when we hark back to responsibility, that is a responsibility. When you say, okay, I'm going to be more, I already have this awareness, and now I want to carry it further so that my life can become aligned with that blueprint that James talked about, that this book can be for people, and to reach that point where they can be at one with that blueprint, it takes a lot of work. And that's why I don't want to be too didactic about that, but there is some reality there, but just do it with a sense of humor, I think. So
yeah, humor lightens things, definitely. And awareness has to eventually, to have a breakthrough, it has to move into action. I mean, one has to move into an action. That's why I see certain people out there making judgments of people's work or their spiritual tools. But it's like, well, have you put it into action? Have you put it into action consistently? How can you say something doesn't work if you don't do it, if you don't try? And I see that a lot. And I think really to be successful with something, this goes back to Malcolm Gladwell and the Outliers. Really, it's thousands and thousands of hours of application. And then when you just think you know everything, you don't. There's another deeper lesson there. So 20 plus years for these different things. If one does that consistently instead of just diving in and then dropping it, can, I feel, move mountains for oneself in terms of reaching a peace, a samadhi within oneself, and then the light that one brings to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be the big miracle, for sure.
Yes.
That we can be of some use to whoever it is that's around us, that we are not self-concerned all the time. So
And that's why it's not selfish to be focused upon self-care and recognizing that fine line between narcissism and being self-absorbed versus introspection, self-awareness, improvement, to be able to be that inspiration for others within one's community.
Yeah. Wonderful to meet you, Joanna.
You too. Thank you,
Great.
Raghu. Thank you so much.
Everybody, Big Miracles. Go to Amazon. Use our link to get the book, as we said before. This is Raghu Markus in the Mindrolling with Joanna today, and on the Be Here Now Network. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com and partake of what's there. We'll do something again one of these days, Joanna, okay?
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.